All right, so here's the right way to warm up when you're playing golf, and it's very important that you do this the right way. The first thing we're going to start with is alignment. And here's the reason why this is so important. Let's say you go out and you play an awesome round of golf, and you're hitting it fantastic, the best you have all year. Then you come out the next time, and without even knowing it, you're lined up 10 yards to the right. Everything feels the same. You can't tell you're lined up 10 yards to the right, and you're making that great swing, but everything's just blocking out to the right. So then you start to mess with your swing. You start making changes, you start tweaking things, you tweak moves in your swing, you tweak your grip, you go through a laundry list of things that you've heard on TV or from your buddies, and all of a sudden it's a big mess. Your swing is totally off the rails and you don't know what's going on. Well, if you would have kept your great swing that you had from a few days before and just taken it from being aligned here to being aligned where you normally would, you would have been hitting it great and you wouldn't have had to do any of that, right? So the first thing I like to do is I'm going to put a club on the ground between my ball and my feet. And I'm going to give myself some space here between this club and my feet. I'm going to also give some space between the club and the ball. The only reason for that is, and typically I would start with the ball more toward the front end of this club. That way as you hit more balls and you start to work further back, you don't ever have to move this club on the ground. Same thing with it on your feet. I'll see some people set it up right on their toes. Well, now all of a sudden if they want to move the ball just a half inch that way, they got to reset the club. So anywhere between your ball and the club and your feet and the ball is perfect. Just give yourself some space to move around. Now I'm going to start out here. I'm just going to use a 9-iron the whole time so I don't have to switch back and forth between clubs. But I normally start out with a sand wedge, and all I'm trying to do is just get a little weight shift to the right and then make sure my weight is shifting through the ball as I'm coming through there. That's the first thing that I want to get down. So this is a great one because I'm super stiff right now. I started to work out a little bit again here recently, and I'm just feeling really tight. I'm not loose at all, and this would be a great way to show you how I do it. So I get my alignment correct, and it probably looks a little weird on the screen, this alignment does, just because it's hard to visualize this club going out in the distance. So don't worry about this being right for this video. Just know I want to put this club on the ground, and if I'm looking down at like a barrel of a rifle, it should be pointing right directly at the flag that I'm hitting toward. Now another thing to notice with this is I don't mind if you're a little open every time with your feet. I don't mind if you're a little closed with your feet. I just want you to be setting up the same way day in and day out. So if you normally like to do a Trevino with a little bit open, I'm not trying to say, oh, don't do that, get your feet perfectly parallel with this club. I don't think that's right. For me personally, I'm a little bit open with my feet. That's the way I like to feel it. That's when I make my best swings. That's totally fine. I just want to do the same thing day in and day out. Same thing with the toes. The worst mistake you can make is getting these toes directly facing toward the club because it kind of locks off your hips and you can't rotate. If I flare out my feet a little bit or open my toes up, now all of a sudden I can easily rotate more through the shot. So I'm going to get my standard alignment. I'm going to make some little 30, 40 yard shots with a sand wedge, and I'm just going to get used to hitting the ball and then the ground. So here all I'm really working on is getting my weight shift to my front foot, making sure that I have a nice clean strike on it. And if I tend to be falling back, which is maybe a tendency I see a lot of people doing, you start to chunk it. This is where I'm just getting used to getting that ball first contact, my weight's on my lead foot through contact, and then giving the divot in front. I'm not too worried about direction yet because I'm just trying to get loosened up, figure out where the ground is, figure out where the ball is, and make a few good strikes. I want to give myself a good lie, that way that I don't have to really work super hard to be able to hit a decent shot here. So I'm just going to go ahead, hit a few of those until I feel like, okay, starting to get fairly loose. I'd work up into a full sand wedge from there, and as I'm doing that, I go through a specific kind of making sure the core pieces of the body are right, and then I start to ramp up more speed, and then I make sure that my hands, arms, and the club are correct and the ball flight's correct. So if you don't do it in that order, you'll end up changing a lot of things in your swing that you don't need to change. So I got my alignment, I got my weight shifting. Now let's get our body alignment correct. So this is our directional alignment. Let's get our body tilts and angles right, correct. So I'm going to go ahead and do the number one fundamental in the golf swing, which is what I call the stable fluid spine, where I'm just going to bump my hips a little forward until the bottom of my club will be kind of on my knee. The top of my club will be pointing back at the top of my shirt buttons, and I'm going to be slightly angled away from the target. Now that's a stable fluid spine that gets me behind the golf ball. I'm still going to have a weight shift to the left, but my nose and my upper body stays behind the ball. That is incredibly important to being able to hit the ball well and to be very consistent in the golf swing. And I'm just going to be rotating around my spine. So I got to get that spine angle correct first before I go to anything else, or I'm going to be, again, changing a lot of things just because my overall body position is wrong. Now, once I get that correct, I'm going to go ahead and start to make bigger and bigger swings in what I call the power turn. So I'm starting out with little half swings here. I'm kind of going left arm parallel, and then I'm always making a full finish or fairly full finish. But as I get looser and looser, I'm going to go ahead and make bigger back swings and bigger follow-throughs. Now, most people think this means how far the club is going back. I don't care where this club goes, how far it goes back. It's how much I rotate my body. Again, my body is what's making all this happen. So I'm going to start out with kind of left arm parallel, and you'll notice I don't quite have a full shoulder turn. As I get looser and looser, I'm going to let my knees start to rotate a little bit more, which loosens up my hips, which loosens up my shoulders, and then I'm going to work into more of a full shoulder turn, getting all the way to 90 or even farther than that. And then as I come on through, I want this right shoulder facing the target. So I'm not quite loosened up here. I'll go ahead and make a full 3/4 swing. So bigger shoulder turn on the way back and get the right shoulder facing the target on the way through. There we go. Now I'm starting to really get into my full swing. Man, killed that one. It's got a 9-iron here. That went 166 on a string. That's about as good as I can do there. So I may be loosened up. All right, so all I'm working on here, and the reason the distance went up so quickly, I didn't try to swing a lot harder. I just made sure my body loaded up by letting my knees move. If you have your knees locked in and you're trying to rotate your shoulders, it ain't gonna happen. You're gonna feel stiff as a board, the ball's gonna go nowhere. Let these knees move, let your shoulders turn, and then most importantly, as I come on through, get that right shoulder toward the target. That's the power turn. So I got my alignment directional wise, then I got my body angles, then I started to make bigger and bigger turns called the power turn. And then finally, I would start to work on the other fundamentals of the swing, which would be lag and the straight line release, and making sure my club is working properly through contact. So as I've started to make some bigger swings, let's go ahead and make one what I would consider to be kind of a full swing here. There we go, hit that one well. You're going far today. I got it juiced up somehow. So 174 with a 9-iron, that's pretty long for me. And then as I get those full swings, then I'm going to worry about having lag and release. So what I'm doing here is finally I'm going to work on actually my pelvis. It sounds crazy enough, but when you start your downswing, I want my pelvis to rotate down. So if you go ahead and take your hands on your hips, imagine your belt buckle. If I rotate my pelvis down, like I'm kind of arching my back, that's going to allow me to kind of squat down and get a bunch of lag. I'll go over that here in a second. As I tuck my pelvis under, that's the extension part. And if I do that too early, it's called early extension, and I'm standing up, I'm tucking my pelvis under, and now I have to cast just to be able to reach the ball. So what is happening there is if I tuck my pelvis under early, I stand up, and now if I have lag, I can't reach the golf ball. So I have to flip to be able to reach at the golf ball. So what I want to work on here is I'm going to tuck my pelvis down, and as my left arm is kind of parallel to the ground in the downswing, my belt buckle is at the ground, and I have some good lag. Then from there, I'm going to go ahead and release out in front, and this is the opposite. I'm letting my pelvis tuck under. I'm getting this nice tall finish like you see with all the pros. My chest is nice and high. My right shoulder's to the target, and I've come all the way around. So that's that lag, pelvis down, to straight line release and full follow through where I'm nice and tall and high here. Now that sounds like a lot, but it looks really simple. It just looks like this. All right, that's all the golf swing is, letting my pelvis do that. So I'm going to go ahead now and feel like I really get some lag, get my hands in front here at contact. That way I can really compress this golf ball and get fully loosened up that way. So let's go ahead and give that a whirl. There we go, and that felt pretty good. And for me, if my pelvis starts to tuck early, I'm going to stand up out of it. That's when I play my worst golf. So I'm just working on getting that pelvis down and then extending through it. And then I would just go ahead, once I'm warmed up here, I'd go sand wedge, middle iron, and then out to the driver. And I would just do a few with each one of those. I might even play the course in my mind. So visualize hole number 1, hole number 2, hole number 3, and actually hit the real shots that I would hit there. So I would take my driver and hit one, and then a middle iron and hit one, or whatever the hole is going to call for. That way I feel like I'm already getting started with the round, and it isn't such a shock when I go to the number 1 tee. Now, one of the things that many people get caught up on is what I just did there, the straight line release. So when you have this lag and your pelvis is down, how do I release it out to here rather than hitting at the golf ball? You see, your release point, or where you should be releasing your swing, is out here in front of the golf ball. And I have an unbelievably good drill that's going to help you get used to that. It's called the straight line release in my Top Speed Golf system. But I'm going to preview that video here in a second. And if you want to watch that full video, just go ahead and click the card that's on your screen. If you don't see one of those cards up here, you can go down to the link below in the description, and you can get instant access to this video in either one of those points. You see, that's, getting this last piece of getting the club to release is probably the most eye-opening piece for people. When they finally get that down, they're like, wow, golf is easy. I got my body loosened up. I feel like my body is working. The big pieces of my body are working correctly. Once I started to release the club correctly, golf got a heck of a lot easier. So I want to share that with you right now. Let's go on over to the straight line release. I can't wait to share you the secrets of how to get that in your own swing. A common misconception I see is that we want to create lag and we just want to hold that lag all the way on through contact and get as much lag as we can coming through contact, and that's simply not true. In the release section, we're going to talk about how to turn that lag into energy, how to turn that into speed so that you can hit it very far and do it, like we mentioned, without hardly any effort at all. And as we're coming through contact, we're going to fully release this angle as we're about 45 past contact. So if I draw, a 45-degree angle, I should be looking at both arms, nice and straight, the club splitting those arms, so that by releasing the club, by getting this angle to release as we're coming through contact, that's what's going to create the speed. Our hands are moving a very short distance, our club is moving a very long distance through contact, and it creates that whip-like effect. Very different swings hitting the exact same position. So first let's take a look at Dustin Johnson, releasing the club 45 past. And the reason we're going to see such different swings producing similar positions is that this is the real physics of how this has to happen. Here we're looking at Sergio Garcia. Again, we're going to see tons